Hey, welcome back. This episode of If I Was had a unique thing. There's a lot going on in New York. Obviously, politics is nonstop these days on every channel, every cable news network, everywhere you look. But one thing in particular that has been getting a lot of attention is the mayoral race in New York City. Now, being originally from New York, in that area, I have a lot of vested interest in that. I always dreamed of when it was time for me to retire and the kids were older and out that I'd move back to New York. I always claim that I'm a city kid. So I'm a New Yorker. I believe that's how I identify, is as a New Yorker. So I have a very vested interest in what's going on up there. And the mayoral race is really coming down to a socialist versus a bunch of egomaniacs, right? You've got Cuomo, who just can't get over himself, so is just the quintessential politician, right? So third generation politician. He was governor, kind of got ran out with the Me Too movement and those types of things. You've got Eric Adams, who I'm not necessarily a fan of, but I'm not opposed to either. I think Eric Adams actually is a decent mayor. I don't think he's as good as Giuliani was, or even as Bloomberg was, but I think he's a pretty solid mayor. So if I was supporting anybody, it would definitely be Eric Adams in this race. And of course, you've got Curtis Sliwa, who, growing up in the 80s and 90s, with all the things with Curtis Sliwa, I don't think, let's be honest, he doesn't really have a legitimate chance to be mayor. I don't think he ever does. He gets a lot of press because he always has. He's very good about getting some press and getting his name out there. And that's what he's about. There's a lot of name recognition with him, but he's not a serious politician. He's not a serious candidate. But he's one of those egos that is getting in the way and is quite possibly handing the election to an absolute anti-Semitic socialist in Mamdani. And I really hope that some way, somehow, he doesn't win. But Mamdani is getting a lot of money. He's getting a lot of attention. Somehow he's getting very prominent Jewish voters. And that's as a Jew myself and as someone who's a proud Zionist, and we talk about that in other episodes, but it's really hard to see someone like Imam Mamdani who has absolutely said he does not believe in the state of Israel. He would get rid of Israel. He doesn't support Israel. And basically has said he doesn't support Jews. He has marched with all the anti-Israel protests. He supports the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, which would pretty much eliminate anything or any relationship with Israel that New York City would have. So he's already said he would implement that a lot. He would go after higher income, which tends to be, yes, Jewish people tend to have higher income. So he's clearly going after their businesses, their homes, and that's where he's kind of starting. So what I want to talk about, if I was Eric Adams, so right now he's the incumbent. He's kind of been tossed aside by the Democratic Party in favor of Mamdani, right? So he's not getting a lot of support. Even before Mamdani showed up and he was starting to get all the attention, Eric Adams was on the outs with the Democratic Party. They were already coming after him for donor money and trips and things like that, all because he had taken the side of essentially a Trumpian type of approach to some of the issues, particularly with slowing down the number of immigrants that were coming into the city, rejecting some, pushing back a little bit, and actually taking the side. So what I want to kind of talk about today is, if I was in Eric Adams' shoes right now, if I was Eric Adams and I was running for mayor of New York City, here's what I would do. And so the first place that I would start, obviously his big challenge is getting money and donors and getting out there. Mamdani is getting a lot of press attention, right? So that's where all the focus is. That's where the Democratic Party, the DNC, is supporting. All the bigwigs from Elizabeth Warren and, of course, the Bernie babies and the AOCs, the squad is, rushing to support him and help him out in any way possible. So Eric Adams is kind of left out there a little bit of an island, and anybody outside of that, the more moderate Democratic Party, is really split between Eric Adams and former Governor Cuomo. So that's going to make it that much harder for them to run as independents. And Sliwa will steal some votes in there somewhere, but let's be honest, he's still, again, not a viable candidate. And even Republicans, I don't think, are going to necessarily vote for him to push him over the top, especially in such a deep, deep blue city like New York. So if I was Eric Adams, the first thing that I would do, especially right now, seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C., President Trump has initiated National Guard, has brought in federal troops, things like that, and really locked down Washington, D.C. He's had an immediate impact on what's happening. We're seeing a lot of arrests. We're seeing a lot of deportations, a lot of cooperation with ICE, a lot of the things. And it's not necessarily that the National Guard is doing the work. They're there just in a supportive role. So it's allowing the police and the regular police departments and ICE to do the things that they need to do to clean up the city and do those types of things. So there's a lot of administrative, a lot of just presence, right? Just the mere presence of being there has slowed down a lot of the crime, a lot of petty crime, and a lot of the major crime, right? Homicides have been almost non-existent. Carjackings, things like that, muggings. All violent crime has dropped dramatically in just the few weeks and few days that President Trump has enacted the National Guard. Now, what President Trump has done is, in his brash way, gone out and said he's going to do the same thing in other cities, right? So he's targeting blue cities. He's targeting cities like that are the worst of the worst: Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, always heavily run cities, LA, San Francisco. So in particular, Chicago is kind of where he's starting to zone in on, as well as Baltimore. So that got me thinking, what about New York City? Because New York City is definitely on his list. He's from New York, those types of things. So if I'm Eric Adams, and I think he would be the best choice of the poor choices that are there, but he'd be the best choice for mayor kind of going forward. If I was Eric Adams, I would announce today and make a very public phone call to President Trump and ask him for the help that he has provided to D.C. to come to New York City. Now, that goes against Governor Hochul. I think she would probably fight hard against that. But again, that's the Democratic Party right now is fighting against anything that Trump does, whether it's successful or not, isn't relevant. It's more of just fighting and not supporting any kind of rational thought or anything that Trump does. Always the opposite of Trump. Now, what that's going to do for Eric Adams, there's a couple of things. Now, and he's got to do it quickly, because we've seen how quick in Washington, D.C. these things have come around. So now that we've seen the impact that the National Guard can have in such a short amount of time, if Eric Adams were to come out and say, and ask for Trump's help, and ask for the National Guard to be brought into New York City to help control things, to help bring down crime, to help make sure the subways and mass transit are safe, and all those types of things, start working alongside Tom Homan, invite Tom Homan to New York, invite ICE and Kristi Noem to come to New York and help with deportations and allow ICE to work with the NYPD to get some of these worst offenders and people with deportation orders already out of the city, out of the country, those types of things. So obviously that's going to get huge amounts of press, right? So instead of CNN and MSNBC or whatever they're calling themselves now, and all the major news networks, they're going to cover the story 100% of the time. They are going to zone in and lock in on Eric Adams and kind of put Mamdani on the back burner. And it's going to force Mamdani to come out and really double down on his defund the police stance. Now, he's kind of waffled on that a little bit and said it's not defund the police, it's reallocate the police and reallocate resources, things like that. But we all know where he's stood before and where he continues to stand. And that's not defending the police or backing the blue. And we know where his stance is on that. So by Eric Adams being a former cop himself, bringing in that law enforcement and cleaning up the city and making it much safer really, really fast prior to the election coming up is going to make a huge difference in voters' minds. If voters feel much safer, much quicker, because it's all about the expedience of it. He doesn't have a lot of time to do this because the election is coming up. It's not that far away. We're talking about weeks now. And he doesn't have the money that Mamdani is getting or the press coverage that Mamdani is getting. So as if he were to make that statement, bring Trump to New York, ask him to come, ask the National Guard, and do what he's doing in D.C., the press and the media storm would be irreversible for Mamdani, I believe. And then what would happen is, because New Yorkers are feeling better, feeling safer, I think Eric Adams would be able to win the Republican vote. Now, if he can pull the Republican vote, plus some of the moderate Democrat vote, that should be enough, or could be enough, to put him over the top in that election and not have to face, basically splitting a vote with Governor Cuomo or Mamdani or Curtis Sliwa. And I think if he were to make that move, that could be, if I was Eric, what I would do is, not only would I contact Trump, but I would also contact and be in touch with Curtis Sliwa. And this would be the opportunity to say, I need you to back me, endorse me for the candidacy, because I'm going to bring in Trump. So it's a move that Curtis Sliwa would absolutely be in favor of, and would poll and do those types of things, and allow the National Guard to come in and Trump. So if he were able to poll what few votes that Curtis Sliwa will poll come election day, and start to kind of create a conglomerate of those secondary votes, it might also be enough for him to get Cuomo out of the race too. Because if they see the support, and Eric Adams sees in the polling start to really pull forward, it could be a place where he can make a deal with Cuomo to give him a higher ranking position, or at least give Cuomo the air cover to back out in a way that allows him to say that how he can even show force that he worked with Trump during the pandemic, and they worked closely together, and he pushed back on Trump when he felt he needed to. Now, we all know Cuomo handled the pandemic horribly wrong and horribly poorly, and I won't get into my personal vendetta against his health secretary that he had, Mr. Zucker. I won't respect him enough to call him a doctor, because I think he's a disgusting human being, Mr. Zucker, and his brother, who I'll leave that for another day. But so again, getting back to, if I was Eric Adams, not Eric Adams today, but I'm another Eric. But so I think that move alone, just calling in Trump and calling in for the National Guard to make New York City safe, and even the perception of it, you can believe what you want to believe, right? There's a lot of people on the left that'll say this is actually hurting people more than helping people. They'll get into the whole, hijacking people off the street and these masked men and all these types of things. But the reality is, Washington, D.C., if you ask the people, feel much safer today than they did 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. Stats are what they are, but we also know, and it's been proven and shown, and even the Democrats will admit, that they have manipulated and changed the definition of certain crimes and certain numbers to hedge the numbers, to make it look like the numbers are going down and crime statistics are going down. But the reality is, as a New Yorker on the street, you don't feel that. People in Washington, D.C. don't feel it. In Chicago, they don't feel it. So these cities are hurting. If Eric Adams can pull the trigger and is willing to take that giant step, that could, and if I was a betting man, I would put a hard bet on that move alone, putting Eric Adams over the top in the New York City mayoral race. So that's what I would do if I was in his shoes. There's other things that I would do as well. I would knock off the sanctuary city nonsense, continue to support the blue. Eric Adams actually has been a big supporter of police and the NYPD. So I think that continuation and that show of support, but bringing in the National Guard to support the NYPD and let the NYPD do what it is that they do, and kind of let them clean things up a little bit, I think would go tremendously well. And I think the flip side to that is it also will start to knock down the AOCs of the world as well. So you're going to see AOC and Gregory Meeks and some of these other Democratic representatives, whether it be in Congress or the state House and state Congress, these guys, all these Democrats are going to come pouring out of it's a horrible move. They're anti-Trump. They're anti-Eric Adams, and they're going to rally for Mamdani. But the people of New York, and again, if you can bring in a Curtis Sliwa and bring in some of the Republicans, I think that even if you brought in an extra 15 to 20% of the Republican vote in New York City, that should put Eric Adams over the top and make him continue as the mayor for the next 4 years. So with that, once he's mayor, and if he kind of continues to be as mayor, I think it'll be an interesting thing, because technically he would be an independent mayor, not a Democrat mayor. So that's an interesting twist. And we'll see how quickly the Democrat Party would get supportive of him and come back to working with him and be a part of that mix. But again, it positions the entire Democratic Party kind of who abandoned him and was quick to attack him just simply for being friendly to Trump. And that's not acceptable in the Democrat Party. So hopefully he'll do that move. I don't think he will. I mean, let's face reality. I don't think he's got the political capital or the political guts, but it's a Hail Mary. And it's something that if I was in his position, knowing that he may come in third at this point behind Cuomo, and Mamdani will probably walk away as mayor, which is a shame. And I really hope not. And I fear what the city will look like under his reign, so to speak. With the seizure of people's homes, the seizure of buildings, the seizure of businesses. We've seen this all before in the 1930s, so we'll see how it goes in the 2030s, but it's certainly not looking good now. So hopefully Mayor Adams will kind of take such a bold move and really set himself apart from the field and bring in the people, bring in the moderates, bring in the people of New York, and do something that's right for the people of the city. And not what's being pushed by a party that really has abandoned him. So that's my take. That's my big move. If I was in Eric Adams, if I was candidate for New York mayor right now, that's what I would do. Like and share. Certainly post comments. Would love to hear what you have to say or you have to think. How bad of a move would this be? Do you agree with it? Do you think that this would be something that would actually pull him further away and make it harder for him to win? And you could certainly make an argument that they would solidify Mamdani being able to kind of run away with the election if Eric Adams was to do this. But I don't think so. I think the people of New York are kind of fed up with the nonsense. They want to get it cleaned up. They want to be safe. The illegal immigration and the gangs and the foreign gangs, it's time to go. And hopefully he'll make that kind of a move and he'll be the next mayor. But we'll see. Time will tell. Leave some comments and we'll go from there. Thanks, everyone.